Welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today we're joined by Sandhya Shekhar, who is an optometrist, passionate vision science researcher, and eloquent scientific writer and communicator. With a background in optometry from India, she transitioned to the US for her master's and now works with accomplished scientists at Schepens Eye Research Institute. Currently managing multiple clinical trials, Sandhya's team is at the forefront of developing specialized prism glasses for patients with peripheral vision field loss. Beyond her research, she's on a mission to make science relatable and accessible and combat misinformation, aiming to simplify intricate concepts for 1 million individuals by 2030. Welcome, Sandhya. It's great to chat with an optometrist because I feel like we take our eyes for granted, especially in a world where we're just constantly staring at screens. Before we were recording, I was telling Sandhya about the fact that I get cross-eyed from being on screen time too much, and so I hope it doesn't happen in this video, but it might, and I got to work less. But this is fun. Tell us, Sandhya, about your journey into optometry and vision science research.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on Fancy Comma. My journey into optometry, um, it feels serendipitous because I almost didn't get into it. From a very young age, I knew I would get into healthcare or something to do with health science or medical school. I loved life sciences. I loved studying about human body and its functions and, the cells and things like that. I studied in India, so we have a medical entrance exam. I gave that, but I didn't get through. I took up biotechnology and I probably started attending classes. I probably went to college for like 2 weeks. I was still young. I was probably 17. And then my dad came in one day and he was like, why don't you apply to optometry school? For like the first year, we had to study math. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it because math is not something I want to study. But I probably should thank my parents for this because they helped me see the bigger picture. And they were like, it's okay, but if you don't do well in math, but there all the other courses that are part of the curriculum are something that you really like anatomy, physiology, ocular diseases, and things like that. These are something I know you really enjoy, so you should probably give this a shot. So I got convinced, and I gave the entrance exam for optometry school, got through the interview, and eventually landed in optometry school. Thoroughly enjoyed everything. Math, yes, was a little difficult there, but what helped was a class full of students who shared the same emotion for math. So I guess we were all in the same boat, so it was fine. But I really enjoyed studying about eyes, like about optics and all of that. I also interned, like we had to do a rigorous clinical internship and in a well-known eye hospital. So I was doing that. It felt like, okay, I was like, I know I didn't go to medical school, but this is a close second. And I always thought that I would end up working in the clinics until we started doing our capstone project, a research project. I just fell in love with the whole concept of research. I'm one of those kids who asked a lot of questions. I was like, why and how and things like that. I remember my grandma used to be like, oh, you ask a lot of questions. So I was that kid, and I think I had it in me. So research was something that came naturally. And I decided that I would probably pursue a career in research. I graduated, and I wanted to get some work experience before I went off to grad school. So I worked in an industry, in an eye care industry, Essilor, where it's known for manufacturing lenses and coatings. And I also worked in an eye care NGO. And both these places I was working as a trainer in addition to doing other things. And yeah, it took some time for me to get to grad school, but I think the experiences that I gained in both these workplaces, I'm sure I wouldn't have garnered that if I had continued to work in just clinical environment. So I guess that was great. So and again, coming from India and from a family where sports is revered, I wanted to study the association of sports and vision, and that was something that I was very interested in. And luckily, I found a supervisor in Pacific University College of Optometry in Oregon. So I got an opportunity to work with Dr. Erickson, who is known for his sports vision research and his endeavors in that field. So it was a great experience. I graduated, and I eventually wanted to do a PhD, but the pandemic happened, and my plans were put on hold. But again, I think fate or destiny or whatever you like to call it, I got an opportunity to work here at Schepens Eye Research, which is part of Mass Eye and Ear and Harvard Medical. So here I get to work with Dr. Eli Pelli, who is revered in the field of optometry for his contributions. This is his 40th year of working, and he's contributed a lot to the field of the research in the area of peripheral vision blindness. So I get to work with self-motivated researchers, and we are I'm like part of a multi-center trial where we are actually testing these special prism glasses for people who have lost vision in their periphery. It's been a great research journey so far.
It's crazy because we all have eyes, but I don't think any of us know how our eyes work. Like I didn't know until I took a neuroscience class that your retina is actually part of your nervous system. And I did do a
Right.
little bit of vision research at MIT. My one of my professors that taught cognitive processes. His name is Pavan Sinha. He's also an Indian guy.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah, yeah. I've
studies.
heard of him. Yep.
You've heard of it? Yeah, he's really well. He's
Yeah.
famous now in India because he has a project called Project Prakash. And back when I was just getting started, I was like one of
All
the
right.
very first undergraduate researchers, and we were doing face processing paradigm. And he does this thing where back in the day, I don't know what he's doing now. I'm sure it's like a whole full fledged nonprofit. Prakash means light in Hindi,
Right.
I guess. And so he does something where he'll go to India, and there's a lot of like a cataract people that have cataracts, but they don't have money or they don't have the technology or access to have surgeries, and he like guess that pays for their surgery, and then they can finally see again after not being able to see for their whole life. And as you know, I'm sure, hopefully, you know that the visual system is wired by our experiences. Like that's the Nobel Prize winning work of Hubel and Wiesel on cats, that they had cats and they took cats and they sewed up one of their eyes and then they made them wander around and then their
Right.
visual cortex didn't develop. So these people, they have been
Yep.
blind for decades and then they suddenly are able to see again. And so Professor Sinha studies their vision now that they can see again, which I find that I think that would be so life changing if, first of all, you pass the critical period, is what it's called, of being able to create the shape the visual system that's how it's supposed to be, but then you can actually see
Yeah.
and make sense of the world with your eyes, which I think that's really mind boggling. But we take them for granted. What got you into science communication, and do you work with Professor Sinha at all, or the people at MIT? Because they're not too far from you in Boston, or they're on the other side of the Longfellow Bridge.
No, I have not worked with Professor Sinha, but I think his work came up um, because we are all in the realm of vision science research. I should
Really
probably reach
amazing.
out to him and see what he
He's a
does.
really good
Hmm.
communicator as well, and he's also a very funny person and just like a really cool, like you have professors you really look up to. Professor Sinha is definitely one of those
Right.
people for me. Highly recommend listening to him
Yeah.
talk. He's a great presenter. He taught me how to present when I was in undergrad, and we did a fair amount of SciComm in our course. I idolized my MIT professors so much. But what got you into science communication?
I was a professional trainer when in both these jobs. So I was giving trainings about like professional training for optometry students or eye care educators, eye care practitioners. I was a professional trainer, so I was explaining to them the concepts, the optics, and all that stuff. And I also had the opportunity to travel to tier two and tier three cities in India, where their exposure is not that advanced as the major cities. And I really enjoyed that part of my job. They rated me very highly. They were like, we love the way you fragmented complex optics or complex anatomy or other ocular concepts for us. And they were like, your examples were very relatable. So I also had a very good mentor when I was working in Essilor, and he always used to compare optics with either like motorbikes or like vehicles, or your day-to-day things where you're able to compare and contrast. I probably picked that from him, and I was able to do that, and I realized I enjoyed it. I was never like, oh, this is not going to be a big part of my career, because research was something that I always wanted to do. Closer to my grad school, or like finishing up grad school, I wrote a few articles for science, not journals, but like science magazines online, and but it was mostly again about vision and like different trivia about vision. When I joined my job here. I really missed all the training, and I was like, and I suddenly developed, also thanks to Twitter, I guess. That's when I kind of got introduced to science communication, because I didn't know it was the thing back then. I spent a lot of time on Twitter because I was following scientists and like science communicators and all of them. And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. So I was like, okay, I need to do something. I started this podcast called Nothing is Rocket Science, because I was like, okay, let me talk to people from different areas of science, and for that, you have to do a little bit of research, because you need to ask them the right questions. I started this. I was completely self-taught. I didn't know how to post anything on YouTube. I consumed a lot of YouTube content, but I was never on the other side. With every episode, I learned something or the other. So, like professionally, how to do research, how to ask the most important questions, and not shy away from asking difficult questions and things like that, and also kind of keep it entertaining. I think I produced about 17 episodes in like a year and a half, and I was like, this is great. Like, my topics ranged from hunting behaviors in cheetahs, to like aerodynamics of a cricket ball, to like mindful research on mindfulness. I got an opportunity to invite to talk to an Indian author who's an engineer actually, but he he has written a book about the science of Indian cooking, so like the procedures and how does this cook so well, but this takes a lot of time, and so that gave me more confidence. But I also wanted to work on my writing skills, because coming from an academic setting, I could write for a scientific audience, like for my peers, but I knew that I couldn't hone. I couldn't write with emotions for the general public. Like, I did, but I was not very convinced with what I did. I knew I could do a better job. And, like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I did a 1 year course at Harvard Medical School. It was called Effective Writing for Healthcare. So, and in that 1 year, all I did was write, and nothing about vision science, which was great. Uh, so I put my podcast on hold because I had to channel all my creativity into this. So I did all that. I wrote a lot of articles, and we also had to write a final 2,500 words a capstone, and I wrote it on a completely new topic, which was nothing related to vision at all. And so all this gave me a lot of confidence, and now I'm trying to figure out. I was like, I'm back and I'm ready. I need to start my podcast. So I have my podcast again, and I also started writing more about other areas of science on my Substack. I guess just with time and with experience, and with just like showing up consistently, um, that's how I got into science communication, and now I think it means a lot to me. It's a big part of my life. Then, and I'm actually looking for opportunities where I can delve into science communication as a professional, and not just do it as a passion project.
What's your mission as a researcher and science communicator, trying to sort of like unite these two interests of yours? Because obviously you're a
Hmm.
very accomplished researcher. What are you doing to, what's your mission as a researcher and science communicator? Sort of what's your, if I can say, vision for combining the two?
When I decided that science communication is what I want to do, or not just science, like scientific or science communication is what I want to get into, I sat down and I was like, okay, what do I want to achieve with this? And I was like, I want to make science relatable, accessible, and I want to influence at least 1 million people by 2030. So I have it's a very research brain, I guess. I have a multi-pronged approach for this. So I was like, okay, I enjoy writing, so I started curating all my articles on my Substack. So I write about everything that I find fascinating. So it could involve like about misinformation, or something about, if there's a trend, I like to write about trendy things, because there's a lot of sensation around trends, and most of the times they are all either misinformation, or there's no actual science behind it. Anything that I find fascinating about trends and about the actual science behind things. Um, and then with my podcast, I want to collaborate with my fellow communicators or educators, and not only communicate science to the audience, but also give these communicators or educators or scientists a platform to talk about their work. I give a lot of talks, both, again, because I come from a strong optometry background. It's to a lot of optometry students, or like the research faculty, to that. But I also give talks I've given talks at high school for like a STEM career path and things like that. And I've also done several eye care awareness programs for the general audience. Like it could be a professional audience, be it like, computer engineers, or like people in engineering sectors, or like doctors, or it could also be people from underprivileged communities. And I've done several of them in local languages. It was quite challenging for me because, coming from an English medium, and you have to translate all of that to a local language. Even though I spoke the local language, if I had to translate something to like all the minutia in the local language, it started getting very tricky. But it was a good challenge, because that's when you know how much you know. You think that you know all of these things, but when you fragment those things for a general audience, that's when you realize how much you actually understood the concepts. I think my most favorite one would be, I was invited to give a talk in one of India's biggest prisons, for the for the for the convicts, and like the prisoners, the life imprisoned prisoners and stuff. So we were doing a free vision screening for them, and they invited me to give this talk in two languages. So never thought I would walk the walls of prison and come out alive to tell this tale. But yeah, I think that was fun. I mentor high school and like the first year college students. I help them interview a scientist, do some literature review, write up the interview, or write up an article and get it published.
So you really are going to try to reach 1 million people through SciComm.
As communicators, it's important to give your opinion, but it's more like it's a mirror. It's like, hey, this is the information I have, which says this is the trend that's going on, or this is what the science is. But the research, all like every research study also comes with limitations, or like there are gaps in the research study which nobody talks about. Everybody listens to podcasts these days, and people throw around numbers so casually. Like, I have fallen victim to this. People are like, oh, 50% of them have said this, 80% have said this, like there's a drop in this rate by 30% or 40%. I'm not saying they're incorrect, but when you talk about these numbers, do you know if there were confounders in these studies? Do you know what contributed to this? Um, you know, and like, I read research papers for a living, and I see how many papers have just go with the concept of correlation is causation. As communicators, we need to know that this is just not to go with these numbers so blindly. And I think it's our job as researchers or as science communicators to show them both sides of the coin. People talk about statistical significance and all this stuff, but statistical significance, what does it say? That the relationship that is established between two variables has not occurred by chance. We're not saying that this proves we got this result and this proves that this. No, we're saying that whatever result we got is not due to chance. We're just telling them that this is what we found so far, and this is what we are telling you. When you get so attached to your research projects and to the outcomes, we actually forget this. And I'm sure a lot of people out there will vouch with me, or will vouch for the statement, or will agree with me that there's a lot of data distortion happening out there because people want to publish in elite journals. That's a whole different topic to talk about. So when you're like,
It's
oh,
like
this is
publish or
a
perish,
well-known
right?
journal.
The publish or
Exactly
perish
the point
culture.
of publish or perish. Right. So when all this is happening, and now as a public, as an audience, I am not privy to all of this. I recently gave a talk to my peers and optometry students in India about the art and craft of reading and writing scientific papers. And I never told them, I didn't talk about anything that they expected, but it was all about what is going on in science. I'm sure everybody knows, the international media talks about what happened in the recent month about plagiarism and a lot of misinformation, or and everything that happened in all the major universities and all that stuff. So when they hear big names, they just go by the face value of it. But I think we should take back that power, and be like, we should equip ourselves, and in the process equip our audience to be like, hey, this is what it is. So you can cite if you have like really positive results. Otherwise, you should be like, this is the evidence, and this is the trend, or this is what people are talking about. And I think COVID was such a big example. There was so much of misinformation. Everybody was playing with numbers. Everyone became a statistician and epidemiologist. So um, we have a lot to talk about in the last that happened in the last 3 4 years. So I've I'm not saying everybody should do this, but this is what I want to do. I don't want to um I want to use research not to just fortify my opinion. I think I just want to I want to tell them, I don't want to tell the public what to do and what not to do. But I think I just want to equip them with the skill to make that decision.
Let me know how you do with this talking to a million people about SciComm. If you end up getting close to your goal, maybe we'll have a million
Right.
followers someday and you can come back and talk to us. I wish we had a million followers. Well, I
I
actually
love
don't
to.
wish that, but it's been amazing chatting with you.
Thank you.